It was very difficult to speak after this film. I cried more during this film, this showing, than when I first saw it, because every time you see so much more, and just how deeply Brent was committed to showing the realities of war, whether abroad or at home. I want to congratulate you, Craig, for this incredible work, such a lesson for the world, and what an unbelievably brave act it was for you to make this film about your beloved brother. Not just your brother, your friend, your colleague, as you described so well in this. Juan, I mean, you were right there at that moment. And I want to ask you all about that and about your work since. But Craig, I want to begin with you and ask how you decided to do this.
Thank you, Amy. It was just like inertia and autopilot, to be honest. You know, I mean, Juan, as you saw in the film, called me. I got a text from Brent about 30 minutes before getting a call from Juan, and Brent texted me and said, "I've arrived to Irpin." I said, "Be careful." Fell asleep, and then, you know, not long after, I was woken back up to a phone call from Juan. And when I saw it was a phone call from Juan, I figured this can't be good. And then, yeah, I kept hearing Brent's voice. I was packing to leave for Ukraine because it was obvious we were not going to get him out or get Juan out if I didn't go. And I just felt like that's what I needed to do. And I was packing my clothes, and I could hear Brent's voice very clearly saying, "Of course, you're going to take your camera." And, you know, we had talked about this previously in Iraq, early in our career, starting off to war. As we were entering into Iraq, it was days after the contractors had been hung in Fallujah. Everything changed with the mission for the National Guard that we were with. Everybody was terrified going into Iraq, and we were going to go right through Fallujah. And we had a conversation and talked about the what ifs, and that was one of the things we talked about, is just a promise to not leave each other behind, but also to keep filming if anything ever happened. So that was a very clear decision for me, that's what I was going to do once he was killed.
When you were filming Brett's body, I mean, I know it's what Brent would have wanted you to do. And then filming Juan in the hospital. Juan, tell us about, if you don't mind taking us back to that day.
Sure. Thank you, Amy, and thank you guys for showing up. This is our last night, so I'm happy that you guys are here to support our film. I met Brent when we were Neiman Fellows in Boston at Harvard, and after that we struck a friendship. Quickly after I finished school, he said, you know, we need you to start working with us. I started working with them. We had done up to maybe 2 documentaries. Then this came about. We were doing a story about refugees around the world. And when the invasion of Russia into Ukraine happened, he asked me, and of course I was going to go with him. And so I think we arrived on March 7th or 8th, and we were making our way through Poland. We got to Lviv, and we could see that everything was being funneled through Lviv, everyone going to Poland. We knew we didn't want to go into the front lines, but we made our way, and we got to Kiev on, I think it was a Thursday. We found out that Kiev became this transit city. On a Sunday, that was March 13th, we drove up to Irpin. Ukrainians had bombed all access to Kiev to prevent Russians from coming into the city. That was one of the first advances that the Russians have tried, is to circle Kiev and control it, but the troops were able to repel that. Our driver and translator had to stay behind because the car wouldn't go through. We started walking. We were told just, stay away from the left side. The right side is the safe side. The left side is where Russians are. And maybe 40 minutes into walking, a couple of cars stopped by, asked us what we were trying to do. And I said, Brent and I, we didn't know Ukrainian, but one driver particularly knew English. And he said he's been volunteering and busing people out of Bucha. And so he offered to take us into the border between Irpin and Bucha. And that's when we were ambushed. And after that, all I was doing was just looking at the floor and hearing the bullets hit the car. I can feel the car moving, eventually breaking down. And that's when I got up. I felt this sharp pain on my leg. And I yelled, I got shot. No one responded. And then when I got up, I saw Brent that had a bullet hole here in the neck. And the car stopped. We pulled him out. And that's the footage that you see, that photo of the soldier took of Brent on that. That was on the floor on the sidewalk. The driver, I visited that. I met with the driver a year later, and we made the same route. We were trying to remember what he saw, what I saw. But he knew that every 15 minutes there was going to be a relay. So he thought the worst that we will do is wait 15 minutes. Someone will show up. Luckily, 5 minutes later, someone else came. They put me in the car. I was already bleeding out. I was fainting. And that's when you see that image of me being taken on a stretcher crossing that bridge. I woke up. I was on the ambulance. And that's the first thing I did was call Craig and said, we were shot.
And Craig, where were you when you got the call?
I was in Austin, Texas, where I live. The first half of the day was just trying to confirm that Brent was actually dead, because I did not want to call my family until I was completely sure. And so I finally got a hold of the driver and translator. They were able to go to where they had brought Brent's body and confirm that he was. But by the time that happened, as I was picking up the phone and calling my mom, my phone just started going crazy with text messages, because these images had already hit international news. So fortunately, it was early in Arkansas, and so nobody had contacted them. So I just then at that point had to quickly call my parents, or call my mom and my sister, and let them know the news, and then got on a plane pretty quickly. Christoph Putzel, who's in the back here, went with me. We were on a plane very quickly, and then Juan, the hospital Juan was at, was being bombed. So even in the middle of surgeries, they had to evacuate Juan out of that hospital on a train.
And Juan, how did you come back to the United States?
So I was fortunate, as Craig says, that I was taken to a pediatric hospital, but they got word that the hospital was going to be bombed on a Tuesday. So they put me on a stretcher, and we rode 12 hours to Lviv on the train. In Lviv, they performed some surgeries, but at that point I had a bad case of sepsis, and there was not enough blood to do a blood transfusion, so I was taken into Poland. We had issues with the commercial flights. No one would take me, and so at that point, the Columbia J School, stepped up, and they pay for a private plane to evacuate me from Poland to come here to New York.
Did President Zelensky play any role at any point?
Yes, they were helping. He put out a statement right when it happened, and his team of people were in constant contact with me, asking how they could help us.
And I dare say that what you did, the bravery in your act of documenting every moment, was that you filming the funeral? Your brother's funeral. I dare say that what you did I've come to meet your mother and to know her and your sister. You have helped heal your whole family and community through this journey that you've taken. And I thank you, because a most important lesson is what you're doing in the world. In fact, Juan, as you healed, even before I think you were totally healed, you went back to work. Where did you go?
I went back to Colombia, so I was on assignment. It was like 4 months after. So I had 13 surgeries over this whole process. I had a colostomy bag, and my leg was just starting to come back. the New York Times Magazine reached out and said, "Hey, we're doing a story there. Are you okay to do it?" And I said, "Of course I want." But I wasn't. I was in pain. I didn't tell them that.
Did you still have the colostomy
I
bag?
had the colostomy bag. My leg hurt. The wound was still healing. But I did this trip. It was a month, but I felt alive again.
Where'd you go?
So I went to Colombia, the Pacific coast, and in the south of Colombia. I had to take this boat that took almost 7 hours ride. And I can't sit for too long on hard surfaces because my leg starts hurting. But I remember being in so much pain, but happy. Like, happy to be doing this, happy to be photographing and going back to the field.
Brent was in Somalia or in Ukraine, following the young man in Honduras. Brent is going through every step. He has to show what life is like on the ground. What exactly happened to him in Somalia?
So that bomb had gone off, and as they were leaving the area, some Somali forces, said they might be possible spies because of this bomb, and they held them for 2 days. It's the only time I've ever heard Brent express any kind of fear once he got out. But it took us 2 days getting all the way up to the Prime Minister to get him released, and they held him in a cell. They were, torturing people in a cell next to him. Beat Brent up in the cell, and he said there was a moment where they took him out of one cell to another, and there was a car running outside, and he said, I thought they're going to put me in this car and that's it, but we were able to get him out.
Brent having autism, when did he understand that, and what did it mean, and when did you understand that about your big brother?
I started to figure it out when my own son was diagnosed, and Brent was coming to therapy all the time, very
And
curious.
your own son was standing with John Albert at the funeral, holding
that
the
was
feather.
my son. Mm-hmm. I had some light bulbs go off during that time, but it wasn't until 2018 that Brent went and got diagnosed, and Juan was there when he shared it for the first time publicly at his Harvard Neiman Fellowship. And that's why we have this revelation that he gave, because I don't think I know I would not have been comfortable putting that out. I tried to respect Brent's privacy even in death, and gauge what I thought he'd be comfortable with, but fortunately he shared this with his Harvard class.
Your brother would have thought, wow, what a crazy time we're living in, when he went to Ukraine. And I'm wondering, do you think about the conversation you guys would be having about the film that you'd be making in this moment we're living in now? And what do you think? I mean, do you speculate what you guys might be working on?
Yeah, actually, my sister just said that to me 2 days ago. I mean, I know what he would be doing. He'd be doing the same type of work. He would be trying to get in, even where they're not allowing Western journalists. He would be trying to get in, and that's what he would be trying to do. And if he got in, he would be finding somebody to tell these same stories. It was always a very simple approach with him. He just wanted to find people that the audiences could connect to and relate to. And like Haiti, it was similar. It was trying to take something that was at a huge grand scale that everybody was seeing, but try to put a human face to it. And that was always the approach. We learned that from John Alpert in War Zones, and we were fortunate John gave us these opportunities. We were fortunate that HBO gave us these opportunities to put these on the air.
And the point you're making at the end of the film is people are holding up Brent's picture, people are holding up Shireen's picture. Talk about the journalists, freedom of the press, which is freedom of the public's right to know, that casualty of war.
I think about, the 3 years of what this has been like for our family. And so I just think about that every single time. I mean, if there's 5 journalists killed, if there's 12 journalists killed, what is the ripple effect of that? What is the next generation of those deaths causing to the children of those journalists? And so, there's so much personal loss, but then there's also the loss for all of us that if journalism can't be protected, then there is no democracy. I remember Brent and I filming a piece in Juarez, Mexico, and we were filming the editor of El Diario magazine, and that's what he said to Brent. He said, you know, without journalism, there is no democracy. And Sharif was here last night and spoke about his colleague that he lost, you know, and it's just, it's heartbreaking.
In fact, Sharif Abdel-Qaddous started his work as a journalist right here in 2003, working for Democracy Now! We were in the attic, and we would go down the fire pole to do the show every day. But Sharif was a banker before that and decided he wanted to become a journalist. And we hired him at Democracy Now! And one of the first things he did when he was hired was go with Brent and Craig and John to Iraq. He was their translator and more. And the impact that had on him, and now in these decades becoming such a fine journalist, doing such incredible work, particularly his coverage right now of Gaza, and he was in Gaza for a number of years.
Well, first of all, I'm inspired and compassionate, so I have to ask you folks, like watching this, like Juan said, working was so cathartic. Is this also cathartic? I mean, how are you healing yourselves?
Yes, absolutely. I can't imagine having gone through this process, you know, not having this art form to heal through. And, you know, we've talked about this a lot this week, that if we were editing, Brent was very much alive. You know, one minute you're working on the scene of him in his casket, but then the next minute you're pressing play and he's crossing the river or he's doing something else. And so, you know, it was very healing for that reason. And just to go back and look at all the people we had met in all these different places, you know, and seeing how little some of those places have come, but just, yeah, just feeling like Brent's voice was present with us the entire time was very healing.
For a long time, I felt this survival guilt of leaving my friend behind, blaming me of being a shitty friend and abandoning my friend back. So all those things just play into trauma and play in your mind. But I think, yeah, I don't watch the film anymore because it triggers some things. But this process, I think, is the silver lining I find in this whole situation. Yeah.
What is your relationship with death? Has it changed?
We've had an entire career of covering war and showing the horrors of war, so why would it be any different, you know, now that it was my brother? So, you know, we decided to film it, and then in the edit room, we also just felt like we couldn't pull any punches with this film, you know, that you can't sanitize war. But yeah, it's been a process. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like for Juan, because he was there, and that's his last images of Brent. But it took, you know, I can sit and watch this film now because I've compartmentalized it. I know exactly where everything is coming. There's no surprises. But there's moments that I get taken off guard. You know, that one bloody image of Brent, I spent multiple years, you know, working through that particular image. And then as we were finishing the film, we had gotten in touch with the Ukrainian police so we could get better quality footage of things that had been playing online. And they just sent me a trove of all the footage that they had taken. And so seeing that same image, but from a slightly different angle, you know, it was completely different, and I had to start that process again. So I wouldn't say it's linear. It's not, you know, it's still not done. Obviously, I'm still healing, but I do feel very close to his spirit. I feel like that I'm very secure with. That's something that I've felt his presence through this whole thing.
And before we end, we were together at South by Southwest when you first presented the film, and so many of the people in the film were there, your family, those at the funeral who spoke. What has that was what month? That was March. So that was 3 years after Brent had died. what has this process been like as you present the story to the world for both of you, and you're here in the audience with everyone and people responding and then taking it back to their families and friends?
Now that we're starting to screen the film and taken to different film festivals, I think it's been interesting, the reaction with people. I think having here, it's been, I don't want to say a homecoming, but it feels like definitely families here to support. And so many people have come every night. Every night the conversation is different. Some of them evokes emotion. Others are, everyone's concerned is what's the status of journalism and what we can do. But it comes in waves. Last time we were in LA screening, and I thought I was brave enough to watch the film. And I remember watching that photograph of Brent, and I started panting, sweating. I grabbed Craig, and I had to walk out of the theater. And so for me, it's very different from him. So now I don't watch it anymore. So I don't know. I'm still in the process of that. But I think like the conversations with the audience is what I think it's making a turn for us.
This is where Brent and I started. I mean, you know that from the early days. Brent called me after seeing one of John Alpert's films and was down here the next day interning. I left Oregon to follow him here and slept on a fold-out lawn chair in his apartment. and we just, we were blessed to get to work here. So it's incredible. It's incredible to put this out. I think it's been very healing. The amount of journalists who were doing the real work that have showed up here over the last 7 days. It's been full every single night with people that worked with Brent in different places. You were with Brent in Libya. It's incredible. Christoph has been to multiple war zones with Brent. Sharif was here last night. Mark Allen we worked with at Vice for a long time. It's just night after night, people coming to pay the respects to journalism and to Brent.
Independent media is essential to the functioning of a democratic society. We thank Brent for all of his work, and Craig and Juan, thank you.
I want to thank Amy. I want to thank you too. I listen to your program every day. You are who I trust right now.